What is going on, ProGuides fam? It's your host Sergeant Frost, and today we're talking about the 3 rules every role needs to know. We'll be going over the main objective / playstyle for each of the 4 roles, which will be followed by their main synergies and also what mistakes you need to be avoiding for each of these roles. If you have a main specific role, or perhaps even fill whatever your ranked team needs, it is crucial that you have the right perspective on your objectives, know who to focus playing together with, and definitely avoid the most common mistakes people make for each of them. So without further ado, don't forget to like and subscribe, and let's get right into it. So first up, let's talk about the Duelists, the most popular role in Valorant. Duelists are important to your team and everyone knows that. They're expected to frag and sometimes even carry. Basically, all the star players in pro play are on them, and if you're a good fill player, you'll probably rarely get to play them. Duelists are fast, fun, and aggressive, but that also means it's a very contested role with a high amount of players looking to insta-lock. Unfortunately, however, that doesn't necessarily mean that players are good at playing them, especially in the lower ranks. So let's break them down, starting with their general playstyle and main objectives. So as a duelist on attack, your job or main objective is to create space and just in general make something happen. Essentially, it's your job to make sure that attack rounds don't end in timeout, and you and your teammates are able to get onto sites. Creating space, however, can be done in a multitude of ways. Obviously, you can just run in and try to kill anyone facing you, but you can also use utility like a jet dash and smoke in order to jump into a site and draw attention away from your teammates behind you. In a way, as an attacking duelist, you should be expected to be baited. You are the bait for the rest of your team, which means you have to be pretty selfless, be able to neglect stats, and somewhat tilt-proof as well. There are going to be situations where you do the right smoke dash, get spammed, and then traded. There's going to be times where you hard clear the wrong corner and then get shot in your back and then traded. And you're even going to run into the scenario where you do everything right but die in vain as your teammates fail to trade. If that happens a couple gun rounds in a row, and also on the eco rounds you're not able to get many kills, you could be looking at a very bad scoreline very quickly. To no fault of your own though. In times like these, it's of utmost importance to keep a clear mind. Don't flame your teammates and continue to try and create space. It's a difficult role as you're putting yourself into difficult situations constantly, while trying to keep up your confidence and also maintaining a level of selflessness that can often put you in helpless situations. This requires a lot of individual skill as well as confidence in your own play. And if you ever need help with building up fundamentals or unlocking your potential in game, make sure to visit us at ProGuides.com to learn from Radiant and Immortal level mentors. They'll be able to lead you on the right path to mastering your agents and your strengths, so make sure to click the link in the description if you're interested. In order to be a consistently successful duelist, it's important that you have good synergy and teamwork with your initiator. Like we mentioned, when you're a duelist, you're going to be baited, and because of that, getting kills is very difficult. But luckily, Riot also added a role to make getting those kills significantly easier, and that's the role of the initiators. As a duelist player, it's very important that you're able to communicate with and play around your initiator. Remember how we said that as a duelist you are a bait for the rest of your teammates? Well, in some ways, initiator utility is the bait for you. The players with the worst KDs in the server are always the Sova drones and Sky Dogs, and that's because you want to use them as bait for yourself to take space. Of course, Sova recon darts, Sky Flashes, and breach stunts, for example, aren't the same as pilotable abilities that you can literally trade, like you would with any other player. But they do give you very crucial information and they do clear angles for you, so that you don't have to worry about them. Thus, if you find yourself fragging poorly as an attacking duelist, try to focus more on playing around your initiator teammates, and that's likely where the key to success is. On defense, of course, the role is very different. You no longer have to entry frag to get onto sites, but you should be looking for duels. Just this time, you really should start to care about your kills. Try to seek out early engagements, for example with an AWP, in order to create chaos for your enemies. Force them to use utility and allow your team to have more info. Getting early kills on defense is different in the sense that you definitely don't want to push your opponents back into their spawn, but you do want to make sure that they can't just use up half of their utility on a site take, and then save the rest for the post plane in order to stall long enough to win the round. Instead, you should be trying to go for different picks all the time in order to have some say in the pace, and force your opponents to adapt and to use utility on what you have planned for them. Of course, if you're constantly dying and unable to find picks, you should reassess and change up your play, but your goal is to still be hard to deal with and be disruptive to the enemy's flow. That leaves us with our last rule to follow for duelists, aka the mistakes you should be trying to avoid. And oh boy, for duelists there's a few. First of all, you have people taking the part of not worrying about your stats a bit too literally, and proceeding to quite literally just speedrun death every round, which of course is not how you should be trying to play duelists. And like we just said, if you're running into some pretty poor stats, you should shift your focus on playing around initiators better. Ask for utility and use their abilities to give yourself better opportunities for more favorable fights. The other side of this are people that get carried away with having good stats, particularly on attack, and proceed to play way too passive, bait their teammates, and essentially try to get an ace every round. Sure, if you can get the ace, it's worthwhile, But baiting your controller and initiator in order to secure a 3K is almost never as valuable as simply playing together with your initiator, getting one kill from their utility and then getting traded. Certainly the first one looks better on the scoreboard, but if the round wins are your priority, then the second option is better. Alright, I think you get it now, so let's move on to our question of the day. Today's question is, what role do you think is most important on a team? Personally, I would have said controllers in the past, but recently ProPlay has shown us that initiators are quite the valuable role in Valorant at the moment. There are many teams that are running double duelist initiators, and there are good reasons why. One of the biggest reasons is that there are a few initiators that can double as duelists, being in Sky and KO. Having agents that can do two roles at once is very valuable for a team because that means they can do well on both offense and defense seamlessly. But outside of the initiator class, let us know what role you think is most important to the team in the comment section down below. Anyways, let's get back on track and talk about how to play the initiators. So first of all, the current initiators can be divided into two roles. Firstly, you have the slower tempo supportive initiators, which are Sova and Breach. And then you have the flexible aggressive initiators like Sky and KO, which have a lot more freedom as to how you can play their kits. Let's start off with the Playmaker initiators, Sova and Breach. With Sova and Breach, your main goal should always be trying to dictate the pace of the game, and in a way, leading the rest of your team, particularly your duelists. These two agents are amazing at setting up other players, but their kits are not great when you're using them for yourself. This makes your goal rather simple, and we can already start talking about synergy as they're hyper-connected. Essentially, your goal is to be working together very closely with your duelists, having a constant stream of comms as to what you want them to do, and what they want you to do as well. Don't expect your duelist to ask for every piece of utility they might want, but also offer to use certain utility based on their positioning, and even ask them if they want to do specific plays. This last one is particularly important if your duelists aren't quick to ask for things themselves, or perhaps are struggling to come up with a play at the moment. You can have a massive impact in the chances of your duelist's success, so make sure to take your role very seriously. And if your duelists are doing poorly, it's not necessarily because they're the worst insta-lock jet, but perhaps you aren't giving them a solid chance into the round. The second initiator subrole are the more flexible initiators, currently Sky and KO. The reason they're flexible is because their utility is not necessarily so team-bound as it would be on the other two. KO flashes are the best in the game as support flashes, but they're also very potent when used as personal utility. Your molly can definitely help out your duelist so that they'll have to clear less corners, but you can also use it to hold a choke or push an enemy to duel you. And for Sky, her flashes are great not only for helping teammates, but also for yourself as kill flashes. They're even good at gathering general information about whether or not a specific area of the map is clear, without teammates having to be involved. So even though Sky's flashes have great supportive capabilities, they're also great for a variety of purposes, including for yourself. Of course, the part about synergy, particularly if your duelists are struggling, is very true though, so wherever it is possible, do try to help out your teammates, even if you're playing a more flexible and aggressive initiator. You have more options in this case, which is to either support them with utility or match their speed by entering with them and trading them if necessary. This is a key strength of flex initiators, because they can change up their playstyle to fit the pace that best suits the team at any given moment. When it comes to the downfalls of initiators, it also has everything to do with team play and calling to do plays. If you want to play initiator well, you need to lead the game. You better than anyone can dictate the pace of a round. So if you're playing as an initiator, you need to take on that role as a player. Many times, initiator players make the mistake of waiting for something to happen before they use their utility, and that often means playing to the enemy's tempo rather than your own. If you want to control the game as an initiator, be proactive and call out plays and in a way initiate the game plan for your team. Then for Sentinels, Sentinels are a role that specializes in stall and defense abilities. Sentinels don't really have utility meant to push angles, but for holding them, the contrary is true. Because of this, people believe you need to have a Sentinel to hold certain bomb sites, and for that reason alone. But the role is a lot wider than that. Sentinels are great at enabling slow and methodical play, and they allow angles to be watched without having to actively have players there. This means that on default rounds where you want to attack slowly as an attacker, you won't worry about being flanked or losing map control. And on defense, the same thing is true. A Sentinel allows your whole team to be a lot more mobile. Just imagine defense on Haven, for example. Without a Sentinel, you almost have to always have one player watching A long, one A short, one B, one garage, and one C. But adding in a Sentinel means that you can have a single player watching up to 3 of those angles on their own. This also means that your tempo is very slow. If you play fast, your own utility gets no value, as it doesn't allow you on your own to play fast, like a duelist or initiator might. As a Sentinel, your role in the team really comes down to being a reliable player that holds down space for your teammates. That means on defense, you want a strong, reliable site hold in order for the rest of your team to have more freedom and room for playmaking, rotations, or stacks. On attack, you provide flank watch and just in general information on what's happening around the map. Almost all of that is achieved through strong setups with your utility, as it would make hitting your site very hard, and on attack, make it so that there's no possibilities of flanks without prior information. As a Sentinel, your utility is a lot slower paced due to the necessity of the setup, but it holds a lot of power when set up well. Whether it's to gather information on a certain part of the map or to hold down a key position so that your teammates don't need to, you always want to be able to rely on your utility to help you more than just raw aim. In that sense, what your purpose is as a Sentinel is to give your team a sense of security. Because you are alive, your teammates know that your enemies can't be on X bomb site nor that part of the map, even if you don't actively have players watching it. And the more security you provide, the better you are generally doing as a Sentinel. As a Sentinel, since your goal is to control the map and provide security for your team, that means you're working closely together with controllers. As soon as you get info on where your opponents are likely to go, you would want to come up with a plan with your controller to either deny them information, prevent their advance, or counter their play. Additionally, since other people are not paying as close attention to your own utility as you are, it also means that you should be communicating anything that happens to your utility as quickly and efficiently as possible. If your cipher trip breaks and you have teammates close by, you need to be able to get that information out of them before they get shot in the back. Also on attack, as you normally have utility for flank and perhaps are even lurking to gather more information, the art of communication is once again super important. If there's a threat or a stack, you need to get that information out clearly and quickly so that your teammates don't run into disadvantageous situations. So really, your communication with your team as a whole, and particularly controllers when on defense, is important when playing Sentinels. The biggest downfall for Sentinels both on attack and defense is predictability, however. If you use the same kill setups or even same info trips on every round, it can become rather easy to shoot or destroy with utility and it loses most of its value. And even though on attack using the same utility to watch flanks is not a big deal, lurking in the same predictable way or even just lurking every round is not to be advised. You don't want to be in the situation where your opponents say, "Oh, last it's Chamber. He lurks every round, so he's probably behind." The controller role is one of the most essential in any team comp and specializes in vision blocking, which can take on a lot of forms. On attack, you'll largely be using vision blocking to enable taking map control by smoking off key defensive angles. And on defense, you'll most likely be using it to disable your opponents from getting information and complicate taking map control. But of course, this can also be used vice versa, or your utility can even be used to create strong defensive angles. For example, when using one-ways. As a controller, generally your tempo is quite slow. Your abilities take some time to use, and generally you need to stay alive in order to help your teammates out at a later stage in the round. You have a very support-heavy playstyle, but that also means that you are needed for your initiators and duelists in order to set a faster tempo. Perhaps not by using your own body, but certainly through your kit. When it comes to controllers, your job is again to make bomb sites a lot more approachable on attack, particularly against super long lines of sight and ops, and annoying to clear angles. While on defense, your utility is mostly used in order to stall your opponents and allow your team time to rotate to bomb sites in time. Controller is definitely another role where comms and being aware of your teammates is important. On attack, you need to be ready to smoke whenever your team wants to execute, and thus you need to be listening in closely and watching the map to see what your initiators and duelists are up to. On defense, you need to be working together with your entire team as well, smoking off any angles your team asks to, but especially paying attention to the information your sentinels are gathering for you, as oftentimes you need to be able to react quickly to a trip or other utility being broken. Another common synergy on defense is together with your duelist, but that's only really the case if your duelist is going for aggressive picks that require you to use a smoke in order to pull off safely. Here, don't just use a smoke because you think your duelist might want it, but only use smokes either after you ask them if they want it or they ask you to use it, else you can easily mess up your duelist play. For controllers, the biggest downfall really comes down to two things. Either you place your smokes or Viper Wall too carelessly, meaning that you end up with no smokes left to use when you do end up actually needing them, or you hyper-focus so much on using the correct utility that you end up not even playing the game normally anymore, opting for some weird 3D version of chess instead. If you're playing controller, remember that at the end of the day, you are still a Valorant player. Your Vandal shoots exactly the same way as Jets does, and you are definitely also able to kill people. Now be careful, I'm not saying that you should go anywhere near as aggressive as a Jet should be, but when playing controller, you definitely want to minimize your chances of dying first. But of course, you do still want to be able to hold angles, not just sit in some corner waiting for whatever smokes your team wants to use. Well guys, that's gonna wrap it up for now. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, and if you want to get more tips on your favorite role, make sure to visit ProGuides.com to look at our great courses made by the pros. We even have Radiant and Immortal level coaches that can give you live feedback and answer any question the moment they come up. So if that sounds cool, don't forget to check it out. This has been your host, Sergeant Frost, and I will see you all in the next one.